Hello everyone, this is the Middle-earth in Mercia podcast, and as usual, I am your host, Sonny, and today we have another Mercian short for you, and we're going to be focusing on the theme of the first one we did, which is talking all about the continuing rumour mill surrounding Middle-earth releases. We've had some announcements, we've had some updates, and the picture on what it looks like we're going to be getting later in the year is becoming clearer and clearer. And at this point, I think it's fair to say that the sort of tip-off we'd had last time from our source, and to be fair, it was the predominant rumour as to what was coming next. I mean, it's been so long since the last proper release that it is kind of inevitable at this point that something is going to get out. It's going to permeate out through all the printers and so on involved in building up the next release. But yeah, I think it's safe to say that the next supplement we'll be looking at is highly likely to focus all around the realms of Arnor and Angmar, particularly around the time of the fall of Arnor. I think it's very likely that we'll be looking at legendary legions focusing all around there. As to whether we get anything extra, I think that is all still to play for, you know. Could there be a legendary legion that incorporates some elves? Could there be a legendary legion that works in some allies for Angmar? Who knows? I think there's still a lot to be confirmed, but I think the main focus, based on the three confirmed releases that we're going to go through shortly, I think it's fair to say it is going to be all centered around Arnor and Angmar. And I think, I'd love to hear from you guys and take part in the conversation. As always, please feel free to comment on the video or email us at middleearthinmercia@gmail.com. We've got Facebook, we've got Instagram. I'd love to hear what your guys' reactions are, because I imagine that this is going to be met with sort of a lot of happiness and a bit of worry as well, because on the one side you've got Arnor, which, while being a highly functional army currently, is very one-dimensional, and the models aren't readily available. I think people are going to be really happy at the prospect of the Arnor list getting some more body to it, and those models becoming available. And we'll talk about this more later on in the video. What about Arnor, though? Arnor, it has a couple of different skins it can play. It's got more than a couple of tricks up its sleeve. It's a highly competitive army, and I think for those of us that do participate in the tournament scene, particularly those who attend 90s, who you like a bit of competition like myself, but maybe don't quite want to go into the realms of the full sweat, I think that could potentially have a really big effect on those battlegrounds for us, my friends. It'd be interesting. But that's enough chat. That's enough preamble ramble, as they say on Trapped in Plastic. So let's move on to our first confirmed release. Now, this was done a little while ago, and you'll be aware in the last video that we obviously were looking at a zoomed-in image of the horse on the left's face. And yeah, it has been confirmed that Arnor is going to be getting cavalry, in this case called Knights of Arnor. And if you see on the text there, they're going to be following the stat line of their dismounted compatriots. So we're looking at a fight skill of 4 and a defense of 6. And as you can see there, they will be carrying lances. And I think, to be honest, that is pretty much everything you look for in a medium to heavy cavalry. Fight for a lance and a defense of 6. It doesn't get much better than that. That is the absolute trifecta of, if I can pick a cavalry unit, what I'm looking for. These are serpent riders with a good quality defense and the shield for if they do become dismounted, giving them more chance of survivability. Because as you'll be well aware, for an infantry model, having a shield in a dicey situation gives you a lot more chance of getting out of it, or at least holding on or delaying your opponent, whichever one you're going for. So yeah, these look really tasty as a stat line. I mean, I've heard people talking about what are the possible points values we could be looking at these, and I think I'm correct in saying that it's 12 or 13 for a Serpent Rider. So I think we'll be looking upwards of there. It has to be, surely, because they've got additional bonuses that add on to it. You would imagine we're surely looking at maybe 14 or 15 points for these, just because of the additional bonuses. But then you sort of think about it and you're like, oh, well, we've got Rohan Royal Guard around that points level, and they've got Bodyguard, and then they've got their other bonuses. So, there's a few things at play here in how they're going to balance them, because, obviously, Rohan do have that, and they've got the strength bonus, but these have got lances. You're getting a flat -1 to your rolls to kill. So yeah, these depend. I can't imagine them being 17, 18, because then we're pushing into real premium pieces. So in terms of price, we're talking camels, we're talking mounted elves, and I can't see the justification for going that high. So yeah, I think around 15 points. I could see it going there. I could see it going 14 points, but that will be very interesting to see how these come out in the pointage, and what place they maybe play in the Legendary Legion. As it is with Arnor and their current rule set, I think these are a perfect addition just for vanilla Arnor. It gives you some much needed mobility, and if you have 4, maybe 5 of these, you've got the ability to deploy some hitting power in a specific area of the battlefield. So very interesting. But on the models themselves, I will say, great horses. I do quite enjoy the horse poses. I think the one that's rearing up, when you've got a few of these, that might be a little bit overly noticeable. The one thing I will say is I'm a bit confused by the faces, to be honest. Is Arnor going mixed sexed regiments? Which I don't have a problem with at all. I think an overstretched kingdom like Arnor, although sort of in Tolkien's lore it does seem that it's more sort of as it was back in sort of the Dark Ages, where predominantly the fighting was done by a majority male cohort. But I think for a kingdom like Arnor, they're overstretched. They need everybody that's capable to try and man the defences, if you'll forgive the turn of phrase there. I think it actually would, out of sort of the kingdoms of men we know of and we've got armies for, of all of them, I think it probably makes the most sense for them. And the reason I bring this up is because, just for me, the faces are reading as female to me, and I don't know whether that is the intention of the sculpt or not. If they're sticking with the current sculpts and they're all intended to be male models, I'm a bit like, that's not really selling that to me. They've got if they were elves, I would say it's fine, but they're not reading in the way as other models to me. So that's a bit confusing. And I would have thought if they were moving to our first mankind faction, human faction, that was going to have the ability to field female warriors in a substantial manner, I would have thought they were going to mention that. So yeah, the sculpts on the faces definitely throw me a bit. Maybe it's just the painting, maybe it's just the phrasing. I think we've seen that before with Gothmog's Warg in the past. That looked to me and many others, it looked quite ridiculous when they first announced it. But then when you've seen some alternative paint jobs, some alternative angles, it didn't look like that. So that could be the case here. I have heard other people mention the faces, but yeah, that was just something for me that, as I say, if that's the approach, I've got no issue with that whatsoever. But if these are meant to be male models in these angles, in this painting, it's not really quite selling right to me. They look a bit too feminine, a bit too elf-like. But yeah, that, you know, compared to the style of sculpts that we've had before, I know other games have different styles. I'm just within the framework we have. But anyway, some cool rules. I think majority-wise, like just that minor thing about the faces, you're not really going to notice that at 3 foot away from you on the table. I really do like the horses, but yeah, that pose of it rearing up, that's going to be really noticeable if these are the only 2 sculpts and you've got maybe 3 of them. The other one, I think, blends a bit better. It's a bit more neutral with some alternative colours between the horses. I think it'd be less noticeable. But we've spoken enough about the Arnor cavalry, so let's talk about some more Arnor cavalry. So next up we have, and you have to forgive me if I'm butchering the phrasing, is Argadir. And he is, I think he's it says he's one of the most trusted captains in Arnor, and he has some additional rules. They've confirmed that he is defense 7, fight 5, both very good things. 2 attacks, so you are going to have to be a little bit careful with him, but he's got a horse, so that can make up for that. And on foot, you've got spears support aplenty in Arnor. And he also has a familiar special rule, Master of Battle. And like I believe it is the Iron Heels captains, he's got Master of Battle on a 5+, which on a cavalry model, which maybe you're having him lead your cavalry, is quite a nice addition, I think, because cavalry, more so than many other choices, do frequently need the benefit of a heroic move to make sure that they can deliver that charge, and the prospect of a third of your counters, if it's going the other way, potentially being free, I think that's going to be something for the opponent to think about, whether it really is worth them spending that might. And with this addition of a mounted hero who's got a lance, that's some real hitting power. That combined with the knights, you know, if you have this guy and 3 or 4 knights, and they're arriving at just the right time, maybe you've got a banner in the mix somewhere, that could really, really help. Or like him and a few knights, just driving off a lightly defended objective and then returning. That could be really, really useful, and another tool in the toolbox for Arnor. And, you know, looking at the sculpt, again, you've got the rearing up pose. Let's just jump back very quickly. No, it is significantly different. I mean, maybe the back end of the horse... No, the legs are reversed, but it does look quite similar. But yeah, they are obviously different poses. I'm more okay with this rearing up sort of, you know, look at me on a hero model, to be honest, because it's nice to have them a little bit more prominent, although you don't get much more prominent than having your lance aloft with a mini banner on it and a plume on your helmet, do you? But yeah, and also he's got the expert rider special rule. I should have mentioned that. That, you know, that could come into play here and there. Probably useful if, you know, somebody's black darted your horse and you're in combat. Something to think about whether you want to try for a 5, so you can might up for a 6 if it's that important to you, or something like that. But yeah, focusing on the sculpt, I really like this sculpt. He looks like a badass. He looks like a veteran. With that beard, there's absolutely no doubt that he is a male. And yeah, I really like the fur cloak. I like the higher level of detail on the model. I like the sword as well, like a nice big long sword, and having a lance on possibly a hero that's maybe getting 3 might. It doesn't say he is, but if he gets 3 might and a lance, then that's pretty cool. I've heard some people saying they're hoping he doesn't get strike, because then it just becomes an automatic include, 3 might and strike with a lance. Every single Arnor list is going to be taking him. And I can see that argument, but yeah, you don't want every army to have every option. But at the moment, they don't really have any viable combat threats that have got strike. Maybe that's something that they want to keep out of the list. I don't know. We'll have to see how it goes in terms of what else they bring out and what the legendary legions bring. But I mean, personally, I don't. I think with armies, it's okay to have them lean into a particular thing or lean into a couple of things. But I do think every army should have at least like one option of most of the common tools. And I do think having a reasonable combat hero who has strike is just a fundamental tool of the game. I don't think if you're faced with a Fight 7 Mordor Troll Chieftain, your only options are shoot him or just mob him and hope he duffs his rolls. That's not really strategy, is it? That's just rock, paper, scissors. This is how you beat that. It's not giving you the option of risk of, do I put my hero in there? He's fight 5. I'm going to need a minimum of 3 to strike above him, and so on. Or when do I do that? Do I try and milk his resources for a bit before I go in? So, there's more than one way to cut it when you're thinking about those kind of options. But yeah, on the whole, I think this is a really cool model. I think with the addition of the cavalry, I've got to say, I like some of the Arnor rules as it is, and this has got me thinking: do I not spend anything else for the rest of the year and start to save up? Because I do think setting up at least an Arnor army, if you don't have any already, is going to cost a pretty penny. But we will get on to that later. So moving on to our third and final confirmed release. And it is a release for Angmar. And here we have Nasak, who is confirmed as basically having the same profile as a standard Orc captain. So we're looking at Fight 4, I imagine D5, because he's got no shield, but does clearly have armor on there. He starts off only armed with a dagger, and he will have 3 might. Now, Nasak's special selling point is that he is able to steal stuff, and this has been brought in the creation of a new rule, scavenge. So what this allows him to do is this essentially allows him to, when he is the person to deal the killing blow on a model, he can steal war gear from them. He can't change his armor, he can't steal living creatures, he can't steal the One Ring. And he also can't take items that are integral to a model, such as claws and teeth. But that leaves a whole host of other war gear that he could potentially pick up. We're talking Staffs of Power, we're talking the Crown of Morgul, we're talking Andril, we're talking shields. He also can't take mounts. So, there's a few things that are excluded there, but that leaves a lot of room for options. And obviously, if he were to have a game and a half, he could be the most stacked out Fight 4 model on the table. But I think we can assume, because of the way it referred to him sort of being fairly similar to other Orc captains, that he's not getting strike or anything. So I don't know. I don't personally feel particularly excited by this model. I think if you're having a fun game at home, I think if you're having a narrative game, you could have a lot of fun with this model. This is the kind of model, I'm going to do some things that maybe aren't necessarily the biggest benefit to me winning the game, because I want Nasak to tell a story here. And I do think this is the exact kind of model that you can tell a story with. In terms of, is he going to be played? He might well be played, but I think it would probably more be for the fact that he's got 3 might. If you've got the option and you can afford it, and it's between taking an Orc captain in your Angmar list, or it's between taking Nasak, and you can afford it and you want that extra point of might, I think he could get picked up there. But I just, I think he'll probably be included in a Legendary Legion that maybe necessitates him, which could also push him into more lists. But I can't see this otherwise being a big feature of sort of tournament games. But, great if you want a bit of a themey game. I do think it is a bit of a fun model. But I think for those of us that are looking at potentially supplementing an Angmar list and a different way to play it, I can't see that being this. So moving on to the actual model itself, I also, to be honest, don't think this is the greatest Orc Captain model I've ever seen Forge World release. I don't think the face sculpt is amazing. And the rest of him, yeah, that's an Orc Captain, and he's got a sword, and he's got a banner for a cloak, and he's got a helmet in his bag. It's not really blowing me away, and to be honest, the rules don't personally get me excited. But I would love to hear from you guys if you strongly disagree on that. Was this for you as more of a theme or a lore player or a home player or a friendly local gaming store player? Is this a nice inclusion for you to see something that is more themey, that is a bit more of a laugh, that maybe is more sort of grassroots of the origins of the game before we sort of had a proper formal match play guide and all that kind of business? This is a broad church in terms of why people play this game. So I would love to hear from people that maybe have a different point of view from me. But yeah, I have bought models in the past that don't necessarily have rules that's like, I'm going to play this at a tournament, but the models themselves got me excited, and for me this just isn't quite doing it. But let's move on though. So next up, I thought we could just have a little bit of a chat on thoughts on pricing. So I've gone through the Games Workshop website. Obviously, we have unfortunately been the subject and victims once again of the Games Workshop price rises, and these are taken into account. And these prices are what I believe these models will probably be released at, in line with our current pricing structure of how they're selling them. So, and this is assuming that these are all going to be Forge World resin and in line with that current pricing. So for the Arnor Cavalry, if it follows the Dunlending Cavalry, we're looking at £32.50 for the 2. For Argadir, and this is following the pricing for modern Forge World models, where it's a hero and you've got one mounted option and you've got dismounted option, we're looking at £33.50. And then for Nasak, to my knowledge, they have never released a single named model by itself. It's always been packaged with something else, and for that we're looking in the region of £25.50, which is how they're currently selling those models. I know the numbers keep going up and up. That is quite shocking that we're looking at nearly £100 if you bought all of these releases. And you would probably wind up, so it's 222. So for 6 models, you'd be looking at £100. That really is a luxury product to run these armies. It's looking like, and there's going to be more things on the side if you don't have Arnor already. these armies could be very expensive to run. I think Arnor will obviously be a lot cheaper because you've got a lot of plastic models. It'd be interesting to see what they do with Gulliver, because obviously he's not available at the moment, and what price he may return with. Personally, I think that's probably the worst sculpted model I've seen in the entire range. I hate it. That desperately needs a redo. But I have got my eye on how to do some conversions, because I am thinking about maybe when this is released, running some sort of Angmar list to play at more competitive, like 90 events. I don't think it'd be fair to take it at 80s because of the problems I've mentioned with the model in the past. Well, just how that list plays. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what else we get. Looking at, like, for instance, the Dunlending Warband, which is, I don't know, I think it's like 15 Dunland warrior models, including a captain and a banner. With the price increases, I saw that's gone up to 57 quid. So we're probably looking at some sort of package like that for Arnor warriors. You're going to need 2 of them, really. So yeah, and then we've got the king and the seer. They're probably going to be another 25, 30 quid. So if you're picking up a couple of packs of Arnor, yeah, you are easily looking at 250 quid to run a reasonable size Arnor force, which is a bit unfortunate, really. I think it would be nice if these prices are lower, but it's the same with a lot of things. But I think we have to be realistic. If you are on a budget, maybe consider trading in one of your armies or saving now. For me, I do try and keep myself on a reasonable budget with these things, so I will definitely be saving. I am really tempted by Arnor, so I think for the next few months, up to 6 months, although people are sort of talking September, October, November, so maybe sooner rather than later. But yeah, I'm going to be saving up my hobby budget because I would like to consider Arnor in future. One thing I will add is I've seen a few sort of people in other areas of the hobby, like 40k, people that are fairly well connected to the rumourverse that is Games Workshop, sort of saying that they're really thinking of no more resin models by the back end of 2025. And I find that really interesting because obviously for Horus Heresy, they're having a lot of Forge World, well, formerly Forge World resin, but we're going to keep referring it as that because that's what we know it as. They're having a lot of models released for that. All the Middle Earth models that come out are that. If they're not having any new ones, what are we going to get after that? It'd be interesting to see where that goes. Like, are they looking at more affordable ways to do relatively small batch plastic production? From my experience in engineering, when you're doing a plastic mold, typically your prices start at £10,000 and then they work their way up depending on how big it is, the complexity, and how many units you're looking to produce from it. And that can go up and up into 6 figures. So you really do need to be shifting a lot of product to justify it. But maybe they're bringing that in-house. I don't know. That would be an investment, but that would certainly cut out the profit margins. So, yeah, watch that space in terms of what they do with their production. I think for any business that is actively producing its own product, you do have to innovate and you do have to move things forward. And this Games Workshop Forge World resin period has sort of been in place for like nearly the last 15 years, isn't it? So I wouldn't be surprised if we see them moving on to something else for the next 10 to 15 years. But yeah, just my thoughts on that. So moving on, finally, we have the new rumour image, and I don't have any additional inputs from any sources or something. But to me, this is clearly, obviously, that's a scabbard, and I think that is highly likely to be the bottom of a shield. And To me, with the way sort of a scabbard is worn, and if you've got a right-handed model, just the way it's positioned, that shield is looking quite high to me. And just extrapolating scale here, with that I'm not sure what the rim of a shield is called, but with how large that is, how big the rivets are, I think we're looking at a decent sized shield there. And that makes sense to me for maybe a mounted model that's holding his shield or her shield high, in sort of a, like you get with the knights when they're running jousting with their lances in a protective stance. And with the level of design there, and the shape of it, this is looking like a good model to me. So I'm not sure what this is at all, really, but I'm going with I think this is a mounted good hero. Yeah, I don't think this is a warrior. I think this is likely a hero. But what else are we seeing here? This is that looks like it could be the back end of the horse to me, or its robes underneath, because it's not armor, is it? So this is an interesting one. I'm interested to see what this one winds up being. I'd be really interested to hear your guys' thoughts on it. Does anyone else have a bit more intuition on this? I know some people really inspect every detail of the image and come up with some really good guesses. But yeah, make sure you drop a comment on what you think this might be. But there we go. I think we've probably spoken enough for today. You're going to see these Mercian shorts every now and then, really. It's just to sort of cover topics that maybe don't justify shoehorning them in to the main podcast, and it's just a little extra something to get more content out, really, because I'm able to sort of sit down with a few slides and just talk about something that's happened recently, that maybe when I'm making a full podcast, it doesn't quite go with the flow of the episode. I like what we're doing with the episodes lately. We've got a quick touch base with you guys. We've got a hobby update, and then we've also got our tournament reports or army building reports. This allows us to sort of keep this slightly separate, talking about these rumours, talking about releases and things. It streamlines the episodes a bit. So I've been in recent years, last 6 months, I've been trying to keep the episodes down to sort of under 2 hours, hour and a half mark, because that does seem to be sort of the golden number for you guys. I do see that more people are listening to the entirety of the episode when we're keeping it sort of an hour and a half. So, and then we've got this bite-sized content, which seemed to be really well received by you, which is why we're doing it again. And, hopefully I can get Ash involved. We've got everything set up now so that we could, show ourselves again on camera. I've sorted out the problems we had before, and we could do one of these so you can see our organic facial reactions as well. But yeah, that's all we have for today. As we always say, I hope you find some time for the hobby. Get out there and roll some dice. I will next weekend be attending Mini Madness, which is a 200 point GBHL 80 tournament where I think we're playing 6 games. That's going to be really interesting. I'm looking forward to it. In between now and then, I'm hoping that we can get out our Warhammer doubles report, but I need Ash for that, and we'll be covering correspondence. I know some people have donated to the Buy Me a Coffee link, and we do really appreciate that. Anyway, I realise I have wandered into yet another conclusion there. Please make sure to subscribe if you're not already subscribed. But that's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to everyone. And hopefully that latest episode will catch you in the week. If not, it should follow shortly after next weekend. Thank you. Cheers. Bye.